Welcome to the Author Roundup. This special segment of the Book Connection show features up-and-coming indie authors who sit down with us and talk about their recently released books. Join us as we chat with our next guest author. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma, one of the hosts for Author Roundup. Today with me, I have Lisa Malooly. She is the author of her book, For You, My Hero. She is a third-generation Texan with a passion for global cultures and a unique personal journey. In her book, Lisa reflects on the stories that inspired her while teaching students from around the world, with a portion of her book royalties supporting St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which is amazing. Thank you, Lisa. How are you today?
Oh, Emma, thank you so much for having me. This is such an incredible venue. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book, For You, My Hero?
Were you my hero? Well, it was written as a personal journey connecting historical milestones to contemporary culture. The
Okay.
book is written entertaining. It's also hopefully educational as a way to learn more about our world, our country, our traditions, our culture, our pop culture, and maybe
Love
even a
that.
little bit about ourselves. There's so many books that they just end up on a dusty shelf somewhere. So I actually made this a gift book. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I designed the cover to look like a gift tag because it is in fact a gift book. And on the last page, you were invited to write to your hero, someone you admire, someone who has somehow made an impact on your life, and give them the book. I don't know if you know this, Emma, but there are over 5 million book club members throughout the United States. And that is why I did include talking points for a book club.
I love that. So yeah, I read about that, and that's such a unique aspect to put into a book, the gift book idea, and also the bullet points for the book club, opportunity. That's really cool. Where do both of those ideas come from?
Well, the inspiration for the whole book actually came from an earlier book I published back in 2005 called Low
Ooh.
Carb Patriotism. Was a breezy examination of history. It rediscovered events that shaped the nation and its people. That was 20 years ago. And much of the information, I made a few mistakes, of course, it has become obsolete. So this book was a compilation of saved information from the first book. I branched out a little further this time into the areas
Mhm.
of philosophy, sociology, world history, but I still considered America's traditions and contemporary culture. But this time I did include the human condition. It's a fun read.
Okay. Very cool. So you mentioned that you weave together things like psychology and theology, sociology, and history. How do you approach blending those elements into a personal journey that reflects on America's traditional and modern cultures, like you mentioned?
A lot of this book really is research. That was the most fun part of this book is research. I'm kind of a nerd to research, learning things about the world, about my country that I didn't know. For example, in the book, what we talk about donut dollies. What are donut dollies? Where did the
Mm.
term melting pot originate? We have a national bird, we have a national animal, we have a national tree. We all know the story of Betsy Ross, but do we know the story about the then 16-year-old Bob Heft, who is a huge part of our flag history? Who is he? There's statues from
Mhm.
all over the world. We have Marcus Aurelius in Italy. We have Michelangelo's Moses. We have Mount Rushmore. We have the Christ statue in Brazil. What makes someone so significant that we would want to make a statue out of them? So I do address statues.
Ooh.
Even the bronze, it's fun, and even the bronze statue of George Washington that overlooks Wall Street, which used to be the old Federal Hall in New York. Well, why is it there? Who owns Ellis Island? Is it New York or New Jersey? What is the UCC? What does it stand for? What does it do? There's just so much information out there that maybe maybe you don't. And a lot of this book was so fun to write because we don't do this anymore because of social media. But do you remember when
Yeah.
emails first came out? People were, I'm going to send you a
Mhm.
recipe. I'm going to send you an interesting quotation. I miss that. So this book is very reminiscent of that. It has just a compilation of fun quotations of
Okay.
interesting facts. The recipe is the melting pot recipe. So I did reach into that memory, which I really miss.
Yeah. So how is your book outlined, or what's the journey that a reader will go through with your book, right? Because like history books, specifically just history books, can be like super stale. And from what I gathered from your book, it's super entertaining in a sense with a lot of research. You've definitely done your research and like Secrets of America, which is people love that. So yeah, how is your book uniquely laid out versus like a textbook?
The I was an English professor, and I had always taught my students, unfortunately, we can't just write freely. We would be all
Right.
over the map. They had to do a thesis statement, which is one or two sentences at the beginning of the paragraph, usually at the end of the first paragraph, that tells the reader what the work is going to be about with the main points. In my book, my outline that I chose was the Pledge of Allegiance. So, chapter one is I pledge allegiance, and then it starts. Chapter two is to the flag. Chapter three, United States of America. So, the Pledge of Allegiance was actually my outline, which is what I always try to tell my students to do.
Oh my gosh. So where did the inspiration for that come from?
I
To do
knew
it
I
like
couldn't.
that.
I knew I couldn't do a thesis statement only because it you usually 3 points are it's not enough for a textbook. And
Yeah.
I just thought it would be different and fun. And
Yeah.
it just kind of fell into place, which was fun. Chapter 10 is the last chapter is probably my favorite. It is about heroes and it homes in on
Mhm.
heroes. The whole book really, I hope it makes people think about themselves and, where can I contribute in this world? Where maybe I can get a statue one day. What can I do? We all have a unique fingerprint that no one else has. So why not leave an imprint that no one else can? So it kind
Yeah.
of just, I'm hoping this book, will do that.
Yeah. And speaking of the Pledge Allegiance, like everyone growing up that, lives in America knows the Pledge Allegiance. So it's so cool that you were able to tap into that because everyone knows it like by memory from saying it, every day in school. So I really like that spin that you put on it as far as using it in each
Oh,
chapter.
thank you.
That's really cool.
Thank you, Emma. So let's talk about the Pledge of Allegiance and why did they add under God? Originally, it wasn't under God. Who wrote
Yeah.
it? Why did they write it? What was the purpose? Got to read the book to find out.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of this, like, I don't even remember, or I wasn't even told this in school. Like a lot of, I mean, granted, like in school, you can't, have all the history points, but yeah, as far as like history in America, like, not everything can be hit on. So you have to seek, your own research to do, everything. So that's cool that we have books like yours that
Thank you.
digs into like the more details of everything. So your book does offer a fresh look at historical events. What key moments in history do you feel has the most lasting impact on shaping our nation's identity?
Past. I think we have to know. That's why in this book, I invite the reader to take a walk through time. Let's reclaim the
Mm,
past. Let's honor the present and possibly be a hero in the future. It breaks my heart when I hear, that we are getting rid of these statues and erasing history. Why was that statue put up in the first place? Why do we have this history? Even though history is interesting, most of the history about Catherine the Great of Russia was written by her enemies, which makes it very juicy and exciting. But so history, of course, is very subjective, but I've always been fascinated by it. And I think it is
yeah.
important to know where we came from to know where we're going.
Yeah, that's so true. And you mentioned earlier that in this book, because you'd written one previously, you added in the element of human condition. So what insights do you hope readers take away from reflecting on America's past and present through the lens and through the human condition lens?
Well, the first book I wrote, it was my first effort. It was 20 years ago. I made some mistakes, quite a few, but I grew as a writer. And that's what we have to remember as a writer. You're always growing. Writing is a process and it's one that can be learned. It's no different than learning to play golf or learning to
Yeah.
paint. It's a process. And the writing process is interesting. And I just think by adding a little bit of the human condition, I wanted to take a different look of where do we fit in history? What can we do? Our time on planet Earth is so short. What can we
Yeah.
do to make our mark? And that's where this book is a little bit different because it does address that. And hopefully at the end of the book, somebody will realize that.
Yeah. So how do you see you mentioned about contemporary culture, or modern culture. How do you see America's traditions interacting with today's modern culture, and how does that reflect in your book?
I think we're losing it. You know,
Yeah.
if you read about the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC, it tells us what we're supposed to do when the national anthem is playing. We're supposed to stand at attention. Men are supposed to take off their hats. We're not supposed to kneel. We're not, we're losing our traditions. We're losing what makes us an amazing country. We're a relatively young country compared to the rest
Mhm.
of the world, but we have such
Yeah.
beautiful traditions. And I suppose I don't want to lose those traditions.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a political book. It's more of a historical book. It's a fun book. I don't want to get too much into that because it really isn't a political book. It is
Mhm.
historical. And
Okay.
history is fun.
Yeah. And so it is also, like we mentioned, a personal journey. Can you share how writing this book influenced your own views on history and America's identity?
I learned so much that I didn't know. And it was almost embarrassing. I thought, wow, as I did the research, I thought, I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. And it's been the feedback I've gotten from people is, "Oh, I didn't realize this, or I didn't realize that." And it's
Yeah.
exciting. One of the most touching stories, when the first book came out in 2005, in 2006, I received an email and it said, "Dear Miss Malooly, I just graduated from high school. My parents are divorced. I lived with my dad, and I don't really know what I want to do with my life. And your book was on the coffee table. I just finished it, and I have decided to enlist in the U.S. Army in the
Oh
military."
my
It
gosh.
was amazing. I think about it. I'm getting teary-eyed now, but I wrote him back immediately. I was so touched. We have lost track of
Mhm.
each other, but I think of him. I pray for him. I hope he's happy and healthy. But here I did wrote a book about heroes, and the book created a hero. It's amazing.
Mhm. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. So you've written another book before, right? And so how was your process like for this one different? What kind of things have you learned that are different than when you were writing 20
Well,
years
I
ago?
took the first book off the market because this is a rewrite
Okay,
of the first book. Yeah,
gotcha.
the
So
first
like
book
a
had
second
mistakes.
edition.
It is. It's a second edition, and
Okay.
first book, of course, had mistakes because, like I said, we grow as writers. And
Mhm.
I took a different approach. I took a lighter approach. I took a more fun, introspective approach.
Okay. Yeah, and so your speaking of that, your book is a light and breezy, yet filled with deep reflections. How do you find that balance as a writer between something light, but then also touching on deeper reflections throughout your book?
Well, I think you do have to keep it light and airy and fun. People read for
Yeah.
enjoyment. They read to learn something, to feel better about themselves. What is the purpose? I always told my students, write for a purpose. Realize, why are you writing? Are you writing to entertain? Are you writing to inform? Are you writing to persuade, to dissuade? And in this book, I wrote to inform and entertain. So that's
Mhm.
really the key for any writing, is to know what the purpose is. And that was my
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, it's good that you hit on 2 things to inform and educate, 'cause, to inform, educate, and also entertain, so it's nice that you can do both with, 1 book, which is great.
And there's so much to think about when you do write. And I always told my students, think about your audience. Many
Yeah.
people don't realize this, but the evening news and newspapers are written at a fifth and sixth grade level. Why? Because it reaches a broader audience. Who is your
Right.
audience? What is the language? What is the demographic? What is the age range? Think about the
Mhm,
tone. Why are you writing? What tone are you using? Is it funny,
mhm.
mysterious, serious, suspenseful? But again, the most important is purpose. Why are you writing? And I really had a purpose with this book to hopefully not only educate a little bit about history, world history, fun facts, fun
Mhm.
quotations, but let people walk away going, just like that person who emailed me so many years ago, what can I do? What can my contribution be to on this short
Mhm.
time on planet Earth?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, when you go to school and you learn about, like, your country and, like, where you're from, you're so young and, a lot of people don't have that, history bug and they don't, it becomes like a chore, right, to just get through history class. But, like, I honestly feel like when you get older that you just yeah, like, you really want to learn more about, like, your background and our country's background, and especially, when it comes to voting and things like that, and just in general, I think is really interesting and nice, to be a part of.
I'm probably showing my age now. Grew up with Schoolhouse Rock. I think I was 7 years old, around the house singing Conjunction Junction, What's Your
What's
Function?
your
Just
passion?
a bill, sitting on Capitol Hill. Learning was fun and it can
It
still be
was.
fun. I
Yeah.
was an English professor, but I also taught ESL. And it was so fun because when we were
Mhm.
studying the future tense of verbs, I brought fortune cookies to class. All cracked open their fortune cookie, and then we discussed speaking in the future. And there's
Yeah.
so many fun ways to learn, and I think we're losing that a little bit. Where it doesn't have to be boring; it can be fun
Right.
and engaging. And
Yeah.
to me, that's just important as somebody who was in the educational field.
And so you mentioned something about target audience. So what is the target audience, would you say, for your book? Is it geared more towards a certain, age, or is it just for everyone, teachers?
That's why I tried to keep it, again, keeping in mind that the news and the newspapers are written at a fifth or sixth grade level to keep it
Right.
simple to it would range a large audience. I would love it if high schoolers read it. I would love it if
Yeah.
junior high schoolers read it. I would love it if their parents and their grandparents read it. Really, just anyone who's interested in learning more about the world, history, and themselves.
Yeah. And I think also, like, the more that you know about something, the more you relate to it and feel more proud about it. So I think it's really important for us to understand, yeah, our backgrounds, for us to be proud, of where we're from and who we are. What so let's move on to your inspiration. So what motivated you to write this examination of history?
Honestly, not knowing a lot about the country. I
Yeah.
when I taught ESL, I had students from other countries who would ask me questions and I did not know
Mhm.
the answer. And I was a little horrified that I didn't
Yeah.
know a lot about the country. And it was kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing. So there was that urge to learn more about where I came from, what
Yeah.
history, we are such a young country, but we have such an amazing history with amazing traditions.
Mhm.
So it was just fun to explore. But like
Yeah.
we talked about earlier, one of my goals, again, is not only to make learning and education fun and engaging, but at my request, I did want a percentage of my royalties to go to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which
Mhm.
I am not affiliated with St. Jude at all. It is just an organization that's always been near and dear to my heart. And just to raise awareness to this amazing organization was something I wanted to do.
Wow, that's so amazing. So, how did you start your research? So you're like, okay, I want to learn more. So where did your research start? Like, where's the research behind your book? How did you go about finding all the information for your book?
Again, working with the outline was key. So when I
Yes.
had the Pledge of Allegiance and each line, I could fill in the voids of different topics for each section of the chapter. So it seems like every bit of information seemed to find a home, and that was
Okay.
fun. So, and again, you just can't write, unfortunately. And I guess we do have to address the dreaded writer's block. I always talk to my students about writer's block. And writer's block, of course, is when your mind and your hands are just not in tandem. It should be,
Mhm.
but sometimes you type and it's just a blank slate. And that is writer's
Mhm.
block. Unfortunately, like I told my students, do not fight writer's block, you will lose. The best
Mhm.
thing to do is to walk away,
Yeah.
go walk your dog, go get something to eat, go watch some TV, clear those
Mhm.
cobwebs, and then come back in. And
Yeah.
here I taught that for so many years, and I had to, take a playbook from my own teaching and know,
Yeah.
wait, I have writer's block. I've got to walk away for a little bit and then come back.
Okay.
So that was a hard part, was the writer's block, but
Yeah.
every writer has it, and it's a
Yeah.
phenomenon.
Yeah, and like you
It
said, you can't
is.
force it, you need to take a break, like, just don't force it, yeah.
Oh, I told my students, you are wasting time. Do not
Mhm.
fight writer's block. You will lose. Every
Mhm.
time you'll just stare at a
Yeah,
blank space for hours.
yeah,
Walk away, clear those cobwebs,
yeah,
and then come back. Um,
yeah,
so I did have a little bit of writer's block, which I think we all do, but I just walked
absolutely.
away, came back with a fresh perspective and just kept right on moving.
And so when did you start writing this book again, I guess? Or when did you start, like, the revision for this? When did you know that you wanted to improve it?
When the first book became obsolete, it was too timely. for 2005. So this
Right.
book is not as timely. It could go a little further. So, and of course, there were mistakes because it was my first efforts. Again, we grow as writers. So I did want to take it off the market and redo it and revise
Mhm.
it. And I chose to do that this
Mhm.
last year. It took over a year, took a little bit
Okay.
over a year. But again,
Okay.
I'm taking information that was
Yeah.
from 2005 on. I kept some historical aspects, changed a little bit, and made it just fun to read.
Yeah. And so how was the process like for writing this one versus the first one as far as like technology and just all the information that's out there, right? Whether it's correct or incorrect. How did you go about doing that?
Technology has changed so much. And I can't believe I'm saying 20 years. I sound like an old lady, but in 20 years, it was 20 years ago I wrote this book. And it has changed so much. Now
Mhm.
Microsoft does capture mistakes. Back then it did not. So I had
Mhm.
massive mistakes. I felt like I couldn't afford an editor. I highly recommend getting an editor. I think
Mhm.
having a set of eyes is so important. And again, I
Yeah.
made more mistakes this time. I did it in APA format, not realizing it needed to be in Chicago style. So
Oh,
the editor helped me incredible with that. So I do suggest an editor because an extra set of eyes is so helpful.
yeah. And so what was you mentioned that you got writer's block. What is your writing routine like? I always like to ask authors that because I'm just curious about how other people's writing routines are different than, some people like to write in the morning, some people like to write in the evening. What worked for you as an author and writer?
What is my
Okay.
writing routine? Because it's a hobby to me. It's something I enjoy doing. Like
Mhm.
I said earlier, it's like playing golf. It's like painting. It's something I do because I enjoy. It's always been a
Mhm.
hobby to me. So I write when I'm inspired. I keep little notes in my phone sometimes with if I get an idea. So
Mhm.
it's a hobby and one I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah. And so, what was your writing experience like for this book? Had you known about like self-publishing, or how did you find Ex Libris? And what was your journey in writing this book and publishing it?
Well,
How
I
was
think
that?
the most important thing I think people need to remember is at the end of the day, you write for yourself. I wrote
Right.
for me. I wrote because I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And getting it published is just part of the process. But for me, it was
Mhm.
just something I enjoyed. It's kind of strange when you do get it for the first time, when you hold the book for the first time. I
Mhm.
designed my own covers, although the publishing companies will help you, of course. But I actually designed this one. I wanted to be a part of that creative aspect. And I did want it to
Yeah.
look like a gift book because it is a gift book. And I gave a book to somebody the other day, and I actually, I don't know if you can see, but I found the
Yeah.
ribbon that looks like the picture. So I tie it with the same
Oh,
ribbon
that's
and give it
cool.
as a gift. But I wanted to be a part of that creative process as well. But at the end of the day, you find a publisher that you're comfortable with, but you have to write for you.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say creative. So it's so great that self-publishing, allows writers to have that creative control, right? So you wanted to create your own cover, which is amazing. That's actually ideal because you already have, an idea of what you want. And I mean, obviously, like there's feedback and stuff. But ultimately, it is your book, it is your word, it is your story. So it's great that self-publishing, doesn't impose on your creativity, and you have control over what you want to do, and obviously it has to go through editing and stuff, but
Is considering, yeah, but if somebody is considering self-publishing, it is important to remember that it is just that, self-publishing. It's
Mhm.
not like the movies where you have this editor who looks at everything and, oh, I need to
Right.
change this sentence and perhaps add this grammatical error here. It's not like that at all. It's all on you. And that's why it is so
Mhm.
important to get an editor to get the
Mhm.
help you need. I didn't do it the first time because I really
Mhm.
didn't know how. I kind of thought
Mhm.
that when you self-publish, they do all that for you. They do not. And it is up to you
Mhm.
to fix those mistakes and get it
Yeah.
properly formatted.
And so what part of your book was the most fun to write, this time around? Is there a part of your book that sticks out to you the most?
I love the part. I love the quotations. I guess because I'm not that interesting, I can't come up with interesting things to say. So I've always been fascinated with famous quotations. So there's quite a few quotations in there, and those are fun to see how other people think, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that.
I mean, I say like, not my circus, not my monkeys. I didn't invent that. I say it all the time, but I didn't invent it. So it's fun. I always love that. I There's so many parts to the book that are just fun. It's just
Mhm.
fun. And I guess the fact that it is a gift book and it won't be wasted on a shelf somewhere, that somebody can give it as a gift, because I don't want these books to just be dusty on a shelf. I want them passed
Right,
around.
yeah.
I mean, how many times do you have a gift for someone you don't know what to give them, or someone
Mhm.
means so much to you and you never get a chance to tell them the impact they made on your life? So
Mhm.
there's and it was just a fun thing to add.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about pop culture. So how is pop culture intertwined in your book? I'm very curious about that.
Well, back to the geometric period, they said that art imitates life. And that goes
Yeah.
back so far in antiquity, but it still holds true today. So I do a fun exercise where I compare historical to what was going on television at the time. And that's probably one of my favorite parts of the book is I talk about historically what's happening in the 60s and what shows were popular, what was happening in the 70s historically, and what was on television. And in fact, that art does imitate life. It goes back a long way, but it still holds true today. That was one of my favorite parts to research.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, what has I know your book is newly published this year, but what has been the nicest feedback and review you've received about your book?
Only been out a month and a half, but
Mhm.
there was a lovely review on Amazon, and that meant so much to me. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody wrote a review on Amazon. It was amazing. But again, you can get the book anywhere, Amazon,
Right.
Barnes and Noble, my Ex Libris, the publisher's bookstore. So there's lots of ways to get the book. But the fact that somebody
Mhm.
did and wrote a nice comment, it really meant a lot to me. And with
Yeah.
again, the book is still so new, but the people I have
Mhm.
given it to, they said, we really enjoyed your book. And wow, I learned a lot and I didn't realize. So the positive verbal feedback has meant a lot. It's still new. Book is very new.
Yeah. And so, how has your family and friends perceived your book?
Really sweet, very kind.
Yeah.
I in the back, I don't name anyone per se, but I do say that my family and friends, mean a lot to me, and they are my heroes, and they made me who I am, and I wanted them to be a part of the book somehow. So at the end, I do
Aw.
thank broadly my family and friends because they're my heroes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Well, and I think that's what people don't realize is when you're in someone's life, you do affect them. We don't have to have a cape with a big Superman in the back. We can affect other people in so many positive ways. And
Mhm.
that's what I learned through writing this book is heroes are everywhere. I mean, we do think of policemen, our military, firefighters, federal agents. We have so many heroes.
Mhm.
Can you imagine these people? They put their life on the line for people they don't even know. You and me, that to me, that's
Mhm.
a hero. Heroes are
Yeah.
everywhere. Heroes are
Yeah.
everywhere.
I love that. And like in today's, in today's world, I feel like it's hard to get lost in, the feeling of being excluded. And I feel like just hearing you talk about like heroes, like it's very inclusive. And I like that aspect of your book that, there's heroes everywhere. It's not just one type of person. So that's really cool. And obviously the gift idea is so cool. I've never like seen a book like that. So that's a really, really awesome
So
aspect.
I think it's an exciting part too, because I really hope it touches many people's lives where they will receive the book and they get that message in the back
Yeah.
and say, wow, I really impacted this person's life and I had no idea.
Mhm.
And we never get a chance to do that. So now,
Mhm. Yeah. And it's so easy to pass off a book now. So the fact that it's like, okay, so this is a gift, you're gonna not put it on your shelf, you're going to give it to someone else. That's like a really cool journey in itself about, kind of like a library. You just like, give it to someone that, touches you. And the same as like the book club idea. I think that element is really cool. Are you a part of a book club? Is that why you had that idea or?
I'm not. I am not part of a book club. And I wrote talking points for a book club. Maybe someone will invite me now. I would love to even sit in on a book club if they're doing this book and hear what they have to say. But truly, think reading is amazing. We don't want to ever lose that. I had a friend and she had three children that were amazing and they went to amazing colleges and they were so bright. And I asked her, "What is your secret? Your kids are so smart." And she said, "They read. They've read. They've always read since they could
Yeah,
have had a book in their hand." So really reading is so important. I hope we never lose that. I was losing it for a
I
while. I
agree.
was reading, rom-coms. I was just reading romance novels, and not really getting out there. But I do want to read more, and I'd love to be part of a book club or even just join in on someone's book club and hear what they have to say. Questions are very light. They're very fun. They're very deep. Just makes you think and have a great conversation.
Well, I would say you can join in on mine. I have a book club, so maybe your book could be a part of my book
No,
club. Yeah. I mean,
I
we
would
mainly do fiction, but I would love to have your book. So I will definitely suggest it and let you know because that would be really cool. I'd be like, I know the
I would
author.
love to join you. Are you kidding? I would love to hear the feedback. And, some of
Yeah.
the questions are just light and airy.
Yeah.
The last chapter talking specifically about heroes in pop culture, I said, if you had who are your three guests at your fantasy dinner party?
Fun. I
Deep,
love
it's
those.
not light and airy and fun, like icebreaker
Yeah.
questions. Deep,
Yeah.
nothing, you know, just something fun that everyone can explore themselves and learn more about themselves. I hope by the end of the book, people really do learn a little bit about themselves. I learned a lot
Yeah.
about myself. I mean,
Yeah.
I really didn't know that everybody has their own imprint, their own fingerprint, and
Mhm.
you can leave that imprint that nobody else can. So
Mhm.
important.
So true.
So I need to join your book club.
So I know we touched a little bit about advice you have for writers, but is there any other advice you have for writers working on his or her first book?
Again, keep an outline. It's so important to have some sort of outline so you don't just go all over the map. Keep your
Yeah.
audience in mind, keep your tone in mind, and most important, the purpose. Why are you writing in the first place? And enjoy the process. I enjoyed this. It wasn't never work to me. I just jumped online and add a little bit here, add a little bit there. It's a hobby to me and one I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah.
So enjoy the process.
Yeah. I think that's so true about write what you like and write what you enjoy because it will, come across as, something that isn't, exciting. If it's not exciting for you, it won't be exciting for the reader. So I think, yeah, that's really good advice. So I think I just have one more question. So what are your personal and professional book goals for this year and for the rest of the year?
Well, I'm working on some projects. I'd like to do a children's version of this book, which will be
Oh,
fun.
that would
So
be
maybe the parents can
amazing.
read this one and they can give their children and they can discuss it as a family, which would be amazing. One of
Oh,
my
I
favorite
love
parts in the book, I talk about the history of the dinner table and how it
that.
is a lost. We don't have the dinner table anymore. We need to have a little worldwide campaign, bring back the family dinner table,
Me
where
too.
yeah, where it just, even just friends who are like family, where you just get together, get rid of your cell phone, sit down, enjoy a meal, and share each other's lives. Um,
Mhm.
and I thought it'd be so fun to have a worldwide campaign. Bring back the family dinner table.
That is so true
So
that I would join. Yeah.
motivated because we do, and that part of the book is under the title called Indivisible, because when we do join
Mhm.
each other and share our lives, even over a meal, it makes us indivisible.
That reminds me of like I was at a friend's house when I was younger and you had to like put your phone like in like a little like box or something, like when you eat together,
I love
where it's
that.
like yeah, and I've even been at a restaurant where you like put your phone in like a little box so you don't touch it. And I was like, this is awesome.
It's amazing. We need to bring
Yeah.
that back. Bring back the
Yeah.
family dinner table. And it could
Yeah.
be friends that are like family. Just the
Mhm.
idea of sharing ideas, sharing your life over a common meal. And again, it's under the part of the book, which is the Pledge of Allegiance called Indivisible. Because when you do join together like that, it does make us indivisible. So I
Mhm.
do love that. That was one of another part of the book I just loved.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, Lisa. Do you have anything else that you want to discuss or anything else that you want to share with our audience today?
To recap it, it's a light read, it's an informative read, it's a fun read, it's an ideal gift book. So I am inviting you to go walk through time. Let's reclaim the
Mhm.
past, let's honor the present, and possibly be a hero in the future. Emma, thank
Oh,
you.
that's
I so enjoyed being with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing with us. And thank you so much for letting us help you share your story and your personal journey with publishing. And if you've heard what you like, then please go to exlibris.com where you can purchase the book For You, My Hero. It also is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble if you prefer that route. And also, if you do buy the book, please leave a review for Lisa on Amazon. She would love that. She would greatly appreciate that. Thank you
Great.
so much, Lisa.
Emma,
And
I so enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for having me.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you next time with another author.